Hello, my friends. Welcome back to episode 4 of the A to G Show 2.0. Great to have you in. I am Adam Amble, coming to you live from Castle Rock, Colorado. And joining me live from Cincinnati, Ohio, is Garrett Collier. And one thing before I send it to you, G, just want to say our thoughts and prayers with you and JC and the entire Collier family as G's grandpa Collier falling very, very ill. So, G, thanks for taking some time tonight, bud. And again, sorry to hear about the bad news, man. But how's everyone doing?
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your well wishes, and we're hanging in. We're hanging in. The whole family's down here, which always makes it a little bit easier. It's good to see everybody. We don't get together too often, so it's tough. But good to have family here, and a little bit of sports talk won't hurt anybody. It'll take your mind off things temporarily, at least.
Yep, absolutely. That's kind of our goal with the show, anyways, to try to get people's minds off of any bad things that are happening within their lives, especially this day or this time of year during the pandemic and everything. Just trying to take people's minds off and do a little sports talk, even though there's not a lot of sports to talk about, right, G? But nonetheless, it's good to have you, buddy. Don't forget, everyone, please join in on the conversations and the chat window on Facebook. And tonight we are actually live on Facebook and YouTube. The link to the YouTube channel is just search the M Factor channel and then just click on it. There should be a live stream going on there right now. So it's kind of fun. We're finally able to do Facebook and YouTube, G. So it'll be a good time. Hopefully it works out well. Hopefully everyone enjoys it. Again, if there's a topic you like to discuss or you have some comments, make sure you leave them, make sure you share, and make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel. But let's get rocking and rolling with the first Spitfire question tonight, and that is, we just try to think of certain topics and stuff, right, G, that we can discuss. And I see them on a lot of social media. I see them a lot of these topics are discussed with my favorite radio announcers and commentary and stuff like that. So first and foremost, the first topic is going to be name your biggest star in lieu of the Michael Jordan documentary, which I'm sure we'll get to a little later, especially if we have time. In lieu of the Michael Jordan documentary, your four biggest stars. And I'm not going to say the best or the GOAT. I'm just saying the four biggest stars in your opinion in the four major sports. So basketball, baseball, football, and I put hockey in there, even though you might want to put soccer in there. But in your opinion, G, we'll start off with basketball. And obviously brought up this question because of the Michael Jordan documentary. So I went with MJ in terms of being the biggest star, right? First and foremost, who's yours, G?
You can't say anyone other than Michael Jordan, whether you want to talk about his success as a player, the fact that he now runs the Charlotte organization, or the fact that he has a multi-billion-dollar company in the Jordan brand that sells sneakers and clothing and uniforms to colleges and other, sports teams across the country. There's no other athlete that has reached that kind of celebrity through their athletics. You want to argue LeBron James if you're in my generation. I know that a lot of people will probably say that, and that's a fair point in the sense that he is huge. And at some point, based on maybe Space Jam 2 blows up, maybe there's a LeBron documentary in 30 years and he surpasses him. But as of right now, it's foolish to say anybody other than Michael Jordan is the most famous or biggest star in basketball history. In my opinion.
You do say Space Jam 2. Let's not forget that's a sequel even to Michael Jordan's Space Jam, the first Space Jam. So you bring a lot of good the brand, the Air Jordan brand. Obviously, you got what 5-6 major football programs, universities that wear the Air Jordan brand. Michigan, of course, is one of them. So kind of why I thought that was great when they switched from Adidas to the Air Jordan. Yep. I thought that was cool. Michael Jordan actually was at the Big House. You remember that, G?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And you're right. I'm glad you brought up LeBron though in your generation, simply because you didn't really get to see a lot of Jordan, right? Did you get to see hardly him at all?
I saw his last season was LeBron's rookie season, and that was the year that I got into basketball because the Pistons were starting to get really good, and some of my friends at school would mention it every now and then. And if I remember it, my dad got me a LeBron Cavaliers rookie jersey for Christmas that year. And so I was like, well, I might as well get into basketball. And I had started to watch college hoops with my dad a little bit and got some, basketball cards. And, LeBron was coming up. So I got to catch just the very, very tail end of Michael Jordan's career. The rest of it has just been talk from, people older than me that loved watching him. But even so, he's the most discussed basketball player amongst my generation of anyone, except for maybe LeBron. So I think that should definitely tell you something too. That I live in a generation of people who didn't watch him play in his prime, and we still talk about him more than dang near anybody.
Yeah, and that's a good. So, are you watching the documentary first and foremost?
I did not
No
watch
kidding.
it. I kind of forgot May, and they moved it up because of the quarantine. And I just kind of skipped my mind. But I have ESPN Plus. I'll definitely stream it before next Sunday when the next two episodes come out.
Yeah. I figured luckily you can catch up, right? So that's
Right.
no big deal. Me and Jess and I watched it on Sunday night. Watched the last 15
How
minutes
was
of it last night. What's that, buddy?
how was it? What did you think?
Well, I really liked the production of it, and I was still, I was pretty young too when Jordan, obviously when he got drafted, what 84. I was
Yeah.
a year old, so
Right.
don't really remember that a lot. I remember hating Jordan actually, just because he kind of dethroned the bad boys
The Bad Boys. Yeah.
in his prime. So you figure, 91, 90, 91, 92, the bad boys are going to be a major
Right.
part of the Jordan story. I know that simply because I know he had to beef up and going through the rigors of having to play the bad boys, season after season, playing them more because they're in the same conference, right? The same conference,
Right.
the same division at that time.
Mhm.
So he had to go through the bad boys. What you figure? What do you think? What's a little more about the NBA than I do, G? But at the present time, how often do you play people that are in your same division? Is it what
Oh
eight
gosh,
eight?
12 or 13 times a year, I
How
believe.
many? How many?
I think it's close to 10 to 12 times a year against your divisional
Okay,
opponents.
okay. So yeah, you figure that, and then having to go through a possible 7-game series against the bad
Yeah.
boys, and the rules were changed. We talk about the rules all the time, the rule changes on
Yeah.
how that really helps these athletes longevity when it goes to
Hmm.
even especially football. You got Tom Brady. Would people
Right.
like Dan Marino have played just as long if they would have had the same rule package
Right.
that they do now in terms of actually trying to protect your money makers, right? And
Right.
back in the day, there's a lot of people that say there's no way LeBron could have handled the rigors of what Michael had to go through. I somewhat
Right.
agree with that, but LeBron again is just a freak of nature in terms of a
Right.
physical specimen. So who knows? Don't forget LeBron suffered his first major injury last year, right? So
Right. I mean, I will stand by the. I've said this on the show time and time again. I think LeBron James is the best at playing the game of basketball that I have ever watched. It's the same as we've had the GOAT discussion on the show several times, and I've said that I think Patrick Mahomes is better at playing football than anyone in the history of football. But you can't call him the GOAT because he's only been in the league for three
that's
years.
correct.
It's
That's
the same.
correct.
It's the same with the status of LeBron and Michael Jordan. LeBron has been fantastic since he was in high school. He took the country over before he was drafted. Has been great every year he's been in the league. Has won finals. He's been to several finals. He's been phenomenal. I think he's better at basketball than Michael Jordan. I really believe that. As much as I'm not a fan of either of them, I like the Pistons, right? If you think about it, as a Pistons fan, we don't like either of these guys. LeBron spent a lot of his career in Cleveland, a rival of the
Yep.
Pistons, and Mike spent his career in Chicago, a rival of the Pistons. So as a Pistons fan, I feel like I try to do a good job of being, non-biased because I don't like either of them personally, but I think LeBron is the best at playing basketball I've ever seen. But he's not the star, he's not the celebrity that Michael Jordan is, and it's going to take a while before he can pass him.
That's absolutely right, G, and thanks. That's exactly right because the question is the star, right? And of course, we don't have to like the star. In fact, on my list, I think I maybe only have one that I truly really liked, and the
Right.
star of the league or the star of. Not current. It doesn't even have to be current time. I got one guy on here that's not even real.
Right.
So, which you'll be
I'm interested to hear
yeah,
where
yeah,
that goes.
exactly. So we got a couple comments. Steve Fox, thanks for joining in, Steve. Again, some avid viewers. I like it. It's great. Some repeat watchers. So that's awesome. Thanks everyone for joining again. Steve Fox says Jordan, of course. JJ, good to see you again, buddy. MJ for sure, but he brings up Kobe. Left tough to beat. Kobe was second coming when he entered. The second coming of Jordan, right? When Kobe entered the league. And he lived up to most of the hype. He had his own shoe, right? Adidas followed him for his whole career.
Right.
I even had a pair of Kobe's back in the day, back in middle school and high school. So if there was a second place, you mentioned LeBron, but I think Kobe's right there too.
It's close. It's close. And as unfortunate as it is, the tragedy that has led to Kobe's death will absolutely play into that, into his celebrity. He will never go on to own an NBA team. He will never make. I mean, they might continue to make clothing with his name on it, but he will never be the guy in the commercials for it anymore. That will impact it. I love Kobe's the one of the three that I'm the biggest fan of. I have nothing but respect for the Mamba mentality and the way that Kobe went about his career. Everybody said after Shaq left, he'd never win another title, and he went out and got two more with Pau Gasol and no one else. I have nothing but respect for Kobe Bryant, but I think he's third. LeBron is a bigger star than Kobe, but it's a fair. I think that Kobe was fantastic, and I think that people love Kobe Bryant. That was very clear when he did pass. The outpouring of love that people showed on social media, and the outpouring of people who showed up to the Staples Center. The man was loved and was a fantastic basketball player. I'm not sure he's on the level.
Yeah,
of
I would agree with that. I definitely think LeBron is more of an ambassador to the league too. So that definitely goes into what we're thinking. Zach Eggs, good to see you, buddy. We're gonna hold off on some of your other ones there, Eggs. I know everyone can probably see it, but he says Michael Jordan. I think this is probably a unanimous vote. That's why I kind of led off with NBA, right? Because I'm pretty sure there's no real comparison. NBA is just unanimous, right? It's got to be Jordan. To be honest with you, there's probably some leagues where even Jordan is in the top 5 of being a star in a totally different league. Jordan in golf, you know what I mean? Jordan in college football. Yeah. Jordan, what did, in baseball, I don't know who you have for baseball. Actually, we'll go to baseball right now. Again, thanks everyone for joining. Leave your comments. We're on the subject of naming the biggest star at each of the 4 major sports, in your opinion. And again, this is star. This isn't the GOAT. This isn't your favorite player. This is the star of the league. Who do you got for baseball, buddy?
All right, so I'm using a unique argument for this. It's I guess this is something that would back Kobe. Like when we throw something in the trash can, when we throw it away, we all yell Kobe, right? If you're gonna play in a backyard baseball game and you're up to bat, the first thing you do is you take the bat and you point to the outfield, like I'm hitting it there, right? So to me, the star of baseball has to be Babe Ruth. The guy was he's in so many movies where an actor plays the Babe. The Sandlot. They talk about him all the time. He pointed, he called his shot. He played for the 2 biggest organizations in the game. He played for the Red Sox and the Yankees. He pitched early in his career. He hit 1,000 home runs.
There's a curse. There's a curse named after him, right?
Exactly. I put Ken Griffey Jr.
Love
in
it.
a second,
Love it.
just because I think he made baseball fun. I think for some '90s kids, a little bit older than me, and then I got to catch the tail end of that. I think he was kind of the first guy who brought that swagger and that flash to baseball. But Babe Ruth played 100 years ago now, and people still talk about him to this day. There's no athletes in any other sport that are like that. Granted, other sports aren't as old, but we don't talk about Wilt Chamberlain the way we talk about him. We don't talk about Y.A. Tittle starting the NFL the way we talk about Babe Ruth.
Exactly right. Couldn't agree with you more. Actually, I was going to put Ken Griffey Jr. up there as well. He's fantastic. Kind of the what's that, buddy?
I think Ken Griffey's fantastic. I think baseball has died since Babe Ruth played, and it won't ever be as popular, so it's hard to pass him because of that.
I really think too, the kind of gets to the question later of which NBA star would have had the best career had they not get injured. I think Ken Griffey Jr. would have been the greatest baseball player of all time had he not got injured. Once he went to Cincinnati. Actually, he went to the Reds, right, for a while there. Yeah. And when he was with the Mariners. Just unstoppable. One of the most sweetest swings you'll ever see. And a lot of people forget too, he was in that, when McGwire and Sosa were going through their little home run race there, Griffey was right behind him. He was right behind him. So I agree with Griffey. I was going to put Griffey, but I got Babe Ruth as number 1 as well. So far we're 2 for 2, G, but I got Griffey, I got Babe Ruth for number 1 for the simple reason of they put asterisks next to people's names because they may have broken Babe Ruth's record, in home runs they put asterisks by certain people's names. He was obviously probably one of the most unathletic people you'll ever see in pro sports.
Right.
And the fact that he is just legendary, right? You mentioned The Sandlot. You mentioned there's a ton, The Babe. There's tons of there's a bunch of Hollywood movies out about a baseball player. that again played over a century ago. You know, let's not forget that the
Right.
longevity of how famous he really is. He's legendary. He's absolutely legendary. Pointing, you're right. Going out,
Yep.
going out into the backyard, playing a little home run derby. What do? You call your shot, right? You call your shot. It's just
Exactly.
legendary. So we got a couple. Steve Fox agrees. The Babe. Woody says Ken Griffey Jr. Woody, good to see you, buddy. Ken Griffey Jr. So
Sure.
these. I think everyone's kind of on par with this question. Let me ask you this: who do you think? Steve Fox says quite possibly save the game. You'll have to give a little more description on that, Steve. I'm pretty sure, even though you're a little older than us, Steve, you probably weren't alive for when the Babe played. So no worries. Let us know what you mean by that. But who would you think for like third? Yeah,
For
yeah.
baseball? I'd say this is gonna be controversial, but I'd say Barry
Okay.
Bonds. I think. Well, can I
Well,
change my
well,
answer?
yeah.
I just thought I'm gonna say Pete Rose,
Ooh.
just because of all of the scandal and the controversy. The fact that he has the most hits of all time, and he'll probably never be in the Hall of Fame because of everything that happened. Him betting on baseball, I think that was such a big scandal. I'm obviously too young to have known it, but I'm sure if you talk to people that are my dad's age and my grandfather's age, they remember that scandal very, very well. In all that has surrounded him in the years since, I think he's got to be up there. But for my generation, it's got to be Barry Bonds. We watched him. That was one of the big records that I watched get broken when I was young. Right, I was a kid, and he broke that all-time home run record. I remember him hitting a ton of home runs into the Bay in San Francisco. It was a pretty famous image of him standing there with his hands over his head when he finally did it. It's got to be Barry Bonds for me.
Yeah, I was gonna go with Jackie Robinson actually. Jackie Robinson
Okay,
for one
that's
for,
yeah, that's
for
enough.
third. Let's see. Let's move on to football. Football was tough for me. I only went because
Yeah.
it's more current, and I went with like who's kind of who's a star right now, and I went with Tom Brady for football right now. Who do you got, G?
Right. So football was tough for me. I have a huge asterisk next to mine, and there's actually two asterisks for two different reasons. The first asterisk is because I lived in Michigan, so I'm going to say Barry Sanders. To me, growing up, everyone says that if he would have played 5 more years, there's no doubt that he was the best running back ever, the best football player ever, right? So my first asterisk, I assumed you would say Tom Brady, and I think a lot of people would say Tom Brady, including your mom, obviously. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that argument. But to me, Sanders has like this aura around him that the way people talk about him, they talk about how great he was and how shifty he was, how much faster and quicker he was than anyone else. But the second asterisk is because I don't think 10 years from now it's even going to be close. I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I'm all in on this dude. I could be totally wrong right here. This is me putting my neck out just a little bit. I really don't think I've ever seen anyone play the game the way he does. If he can avoid, of course, we're assuming he doesn't get hurt or doesn't, get traded to the Bears. But assuming that he stays with Kansas City with Andy Reid in that offense, and they keep those young receivers like Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman and the pieces around him, the dude is insane. I've watched football since that's the sport I've watched the longest, and I've never seen anyone do it the way he does. And he's smart. He sees the field differently. He plays the game differently. I think maybe not 10 years, maybe 15 to 20 years from now. I don't think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes.
I kind of agree with you there. He's just such a stud right now that he can do no wrong, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely, I would go with Mahomes as I like the Barry Sanders talk too. Again, you're right though, with being from Michigan. Okay, you go with Barry. The sweetness, Walter
Right.
Payton would have been a good one. Jim Brown would be a good one too.
Yep.
For football, we got some other
consider
comments
Jim
here.
Brown
Steve Fox says
consider
tailed
Jim
off a
Brown,
little with the Reds. Best pitcher, I like the best pitcher. Wild thing, Ricky Vaughn. I like that from Major League. That's solid. Can't forget Pete Rose. Yep, that's what Scott Slack. Good to see you, buddy. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Boom. That was that was from the Sandlot too. So that's awesome. JJ says all the Yankees legends for the baseball. So
That's fair. There's a ton of
exactly.
them.
Let's move on to hockey. Actually, so hockey was kind of fun. Who do you got for hockey, G?
I mean, you got to say Wayne Gretzky. I saw a stat somewhere the other day that said if he would have never scored a goal, he would still have 200 more points just from his assists than anyone else in the game. Hockey's a weird one for me. I'm not we talked about this a couple episodes ago that I'm just kind of getting into it, learning more about it. I love Stevie Y growing up. I had a Brendan Shanahan jersey. I love all those, early 2000s, late 90s Red Wings guys. But it's got to be Wayne Gretzky. I think Ovechkin is huge if you are in the game, but outside the game, I don't know that people know who he is. I think if you asked, my sister or my mom who he was, they'd be like, I don't know who you're talking about. Um, and I think that's a sign of a star, right? They cross over. It's not just hockey fans or football fans or whoever, whatever sport that know this guy. It's outside. Like you don't have to be a basketball fan to know who Michael Jordan is. You don't have to be a football fan to know who Tom Brady is, right? I think pretty much everybody's going to know who Wayne Gretzky is if
Yeah.
you say that name.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky, of course, is the obvious choice for hockey. Steve Fox also replied back for that after the White Sox scandal. What was that, like 8 men out or whatever? Remember that? With Shoeless Joe Jackson, I believe. The Bay made the game popular again. So thanks for keeping it short, Steve. I'm sure you could get into that for hours, right, on all that. But great movie, actually. It's a solid movie. For hockey, here's my fictional character, and it was Gordon Bombay. I feel the Mighty Ducks, I feel he's the biggest star coaching, and he was a great player, right? The triple deke. Everyone knows the triple deke from hockey, from the Mighty Ducks, right? They named a freaking team after them. That's no joke. They named a team after him. So for my money, it's gotta be Gordon Bombay for hockey. So my mom says Tom, of course. So good call on that, G. I'm pretty sure there was no doubt on that one. So Steve Fox says Montana in the 1980s, Brady after that. Fair enough. I'm sure Montana was huge. He was my mom's favorite player as well. Montana. I think it goes Montana, then Brady, right, Mom? I'm pretty sure that's how her progression goes. And then, like I said earlier in earlier broadcast, she is gonna be a Mahomes fan, I believe, once Tom retires. So she's hopping on those good quarterback bandwagons, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know, because I still think a lot of people, had their doubts about Tom Brady, even at Michigan, especially when he had that dismal combine, got picked in the 6th round. It's blessing. You feel bad for Drew Bledsoe, but it's very rare that you lose your position on an injury, right? But especially when you're Drew Bledsoe, the Patriots were good, so he was a good player. So, JC, hey, good to see you, JC. Sorry to hear about your dad. Barry by a long shot. Wow, he says Barry by a long shot.
Maybe that's where I got it from.
And your dad is right. He basically says single-handedly won several games. He was the only reason we watched the Lions.
Yeah.
So he was the only reason to watch. He probably brought ratings on those Thanksgiving games, right? When sadly the rest of the country has just has to puke up their Thanksgiving turkey because they're forced to watch the Lions every year, right?
Right.
But it's a good tradition. So hockey, I have Gordon Bombay. So let's move into our second topic. Again, thanks everyone for joining the A to G Show 2.0. Dreary night here in Castle Rock, Colorado. G is coming to us live from Cincinnati, Ohio. Visiting with the family and stuff. So let's move into our second topic, and that is the thoughts on JT Daniels transferring to Michigan from USC. Really going after. I hear we're basically really going after him. He was a 5-star recruit, similar to Shea Patterson, right? But he's got better size than Shea does. He's kind of a beast, actually. So, what's your thoughts though on Michigan seems to be pretty well loaded at the, let's see, what do we got? We got Milton, we got Cade McNamara, and of course we got the favorite probably going into camp this year. Hopefully we have the season, but is definitely McCaffrey, right? So what's your thoughts on bringing in as many of these guys as possible?
I mean, if you want McNamara and Milton to leave immediately, bring in JT Daniels. If you want to waste all the time and resources you spent recruiting 2 guys that you believed in to be your QB1, then do it. I'm personally, this, since the day we signed Joe Milton, I've been incredibly excited by his size, the way he plays, the way he's throwing the football in these videos he's posted on social media right now, which I know that those are misleading and it doesn't matter because they can splice up 100 throws and pick the 5 good ones. I get it. I really do. But, man, the kid is 6'5". He's fast. He's long. He's smart. He can throw the ball a mile. You can't bring guys like him. And McCaffrey has played well. He's never played great, but he's always played well when he's been in the game. And McNamara looks good as well. So here's the problem: is if you bring JT Daniels in, you're losing two
Yeah.
of those guys immediately. And I think it's going to mess with the team chemistry. We believe in these guys that we've brought in. People are going to. Honestly, half the reason is I want my dad to be quiet about the fact that Harbaugh can't recruit a quarterback, that he's got to bring in these transfers. I'm sick of listening to it because I really believe that Joe Milton is a stud. I think that Joe Milton. Do you remember Marcus Robinson, the quarterback at Penn State, when they were
I
really
do.
good for
Yeah,
those couple
actually,
years?
yeah.
Joe Milton reminds me so much of him with maybe a little better arm. So I'm high on Milton. I have trust in McCaffrey. McNamara can develop. There's no reason, in my opinion, to bring in a JT Daniels. It's no slight to JT Daniels. I think he's going to be a good quarterback wherever he lands. I just don't know that Michigan is
Yeah.
the right place.
I half and half, right? I halfway agree with you. Yeah, if you want these guys to roll out, but I do like the competition. I do like him bringing in a 5-star
Yeah.
for the competition. It's not, sadly, it's not the right time because now who knows if we're even going to have a season. So it definitely gives
Yeah.
people like, or quarterbacks like Milton and McNamara time to transfer, right? And basically say, well, you know
Exactly.
what? Obviously, you don't have any faith in us. It depends on if Harbaugh has been good at this. You'd think that a person like, McCaffrey was getting buzz in his ears. I'm sure his freshman year when he showed glimpses of awesome athleticism,
Right.
and he's got a pretty good arm as well. But I'm sure he was getting a little whispers in his ears to say, hey, maybe you should transfer. You could play or you could start at maybe even a similar or a comparable Big Ten squad, or maybe head back out west. He was from here in Colorado, but head back out west to the Pac-12 to where there's no defenses and he could probably just shred it. So I'm
Right.
very, maybe Harbaugh has a certain way of really, saying, "Hey guys, this is gonna be good for you." This isn't for Michigan. This is good for you guys. I
Yeah.
just don't see it, because these guys want to play. You know what I mean? These guys want to play.
Exactly.
Um,
I mean,
oh, sorry.
go
These
ahead.
guys want to play. It's just very difficult for me to see people like Milton, and then people. Milton has been great throughout all of this because he's like, you know what, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for that starting job. So
Yeah.
good for him. And right now, I just don't know who I really want. I've seen, of course, I've watched Milton in practices. I've watched him at the spring game, watched him in the games, obviously. He does have a cannon. He is very athletic, but I'm not so sure he's more athletic than McCaffrey. I mean, McCaffrey is deceptively fast. He looks like, he's got those long legs to where it's amazing to me how DBs just can't take that correct angle of pursuit on him because he's deceptively fast. So it's amazing how they're just kind of going at him and then he just kind of flies right by him. D1 defensive backs who are going to be playing in the pros someday are like, oh, crap, totally took the wrong angle on him. You saw that on more than one occasion. So I just feel that bringing in the competition is good, but I'm not so sure it fits, some of these guys' personality. It might fit Milton's. I don't think Milton transfers if they bring him in, simply because he's like, you know what, I'll beat him out. No big deal. Maybe he's got that cockiness to him, or that confidence, you want to say, to bring Milton in, and we'll see how it goes, right? What do you think about who would be your pick right now? I know you're hoping Milton, but from what you've seen, who are you thinking for a starter if we do have a season? I know it's tough to, based on what you've seen.
Yeah, I would assume as of right now, without Daniels on the roster, we'd go with McCaffrey first snap of the first game, and I think Milton would get time. If we bring Daniels in, it gets tricky. You're probably not going to want to go into your first game with three quarterbacks still vying for that starting job, right? You kind of want to have a little bit of continuity, if you will, with your first rep. With your first team reps. Where maybe you're going between two of the three, and I think that third, that odd man out of that QB competition is going to be super tempted to transfer. Like you said, Milton has already proven that he's willing to stick it out because the hype has been more directed in McCaffrey's direction than his, and he hasn't gone anywhere. He hasn't budged. He hasn't stepped down at all. He has said that him and McCaffrey are going to support each other, and may the best man win the job, which I respect a lot. But bringing a third guy in, man, at that point you're gonna just really crush that third guy's confidence, I would think. And there are other jobs to be had, right? We all watched what Brandon Peters did at Illinois last year, right? He played a little bit at Michigan, got a little bit of film, got some hype going to Illinois, and when he wasn't hurt
Yeah,
last
he
year,
was.
he was fantastic. We all remember that amazing game he had against Michigan State, where they shredded him and came all the way back and won the game. I mean, and he won several games. They beat Wisconsin. I mean, Brandon Peters stepped up and played great for Illinois last year. So there's other jobs to be had, I think, is what we're learning in college football. We watched Jalen Hurts transfer and get a job. We watched Kelly Bryant transfer and get a job. We watched this dude that was a third stringer at Clemson behind Bryant and Lawrence transfer. Now he's going to start at Duke next year. I mean, there's jobs to be had all across the country. Like you said, McCaffrey could go back out west. Milton could go back to Florida. Who knows what happens if you bring JT Daniels in? But I do think if we bring Daniels in, we have to start him, right? You don't want to bring a guy like that in, mess up the chemistry, and then not give him the job.
It's
I would
tough.
think.
And, obviously, we're not quarterback coaches by any means. We just go by what our eyes tell us, and that's unfortunately, a lot of times it's the burden of being the head coach, right? Is trying to figure out that right guy. They obviously have all the data. They see him at practice. They are being paid millions of dollars to make these decisions. So it's easy for us to say, yeah, we like this, we like this. It's easy to sit up in the stands and say, oh, how is this not obvious? How is this not obvious, as we so often do?
Right.
We got a couple other comments. Woody says Chad Johnson for the face of the NFL. I don't know about that. Definitely want to, if you wanted to, I mean, you could go by the most famous. I'm not going to say he's a star, but there's a lot of like famous, like I was thinking Dion too, not to jump back, but Dion, Woody says Sergei Fedorov hands down for a star of NHL. Well, Woody does know more about hockey than we do, but that's kind of the point, though. It's the people that don't watch the sport, like you mentioned, G, like maybe your mom or something, to where if she has heard of them, they're a star, right? They're a star. That's kind of what we're looking at there. Steve Fox says the Hanson brothers for hockey. That's off a movie. JC's, I'm gonna have to block your dad again. G, he says, does John Navarre have any more eligibility? So, I'm sorry.
Oh man, I wish he did. I tell you what.
So Steve Fox brings up a good coaching. Steve coaches at Coleman High School, coaches some football. Which QB can find open wide receivers, throw the ball deep, accurate with their throws, had good pocket presence, pretty much everything you want in a quarterback, right, Steve? That's
yeah. Who can beat Tom Brady?
Tom Brady had not a lot of those in college.
True.
He didn't throw a deep ball very well, but. Another thing about that, which QB can find the wide receivers? How about we get some wide receivers that can run? Everyone's touted our wide receiving crew as being so awesome, but they need to start running routes better. Don't get me wrong. They got great hands. I think our wide receiving corps has had great hands. But remember Harbaugh's first year, it just seemed like those wide receivers were running crisp routes. They were open a lot. A lot of the time. So that plays into it as well as your receiving core. Of course, which ones, there you go, G, which ones mesh during practice? Does Milton mesh better with the current wide receiving group that we have? Or does McCaffrey's, athleticism kind of jump him out there so he doesn't have to have a lot of pocket presence? We'll see. All I'm praying for now is please just have a season. Let's get back. Let's get this thing back going. It's gonna, maybe they're gonna have to do some social distancing. Probably. I don't think you're gonna be able to fit 110,000 fans in the big house. But I mean, Sparty should be all right. They always kind of practice social distancing at their games, don't they? They're probably about what?
Yeah, half.
What do you think, JC? About 20, 30 feet away from each other for every game.
They operate at half capacity.
So they'll be used to it. So that's kind of nice. That's good that's a plus thing for Sparty, right? Okay, so let's move into another fun topic. This was kind of cool. I saw this on Twitter. G, again, thanks for joining us on the A to G Show 2.0. I'm Adam Amble coming to you live from Castle Rock, Colorado. Garrett Collier live from Cincinnati, Ohio. We are live on Facebook and YouTube tonight. I think we're having a few technical difficulties over there on YouTube. The upload isn't going as well as I'd like it to, but we'll get that figured out eventually here. So, G, the next question is, who would have had the best NBA career had they not suffered an injury? I have a list of 4 or 5 guys, and I'll put them in order basically of what I think. But I'm curious because you've been alive and you've been an NBA fan for a lot of these guys when they one in their prime and two went down with that injury, right? And you probably love some of these guys. So I'm gonna give it to you, buddy. What do you got?
Yeah, I had three that immediately came to mind that had massive injuries that cost them at least half, if not a full season. Paul George has recovered from his really well. I want to put him in here as a guy who has had a huge injury but come back from it. He's not on my list because he came back from it, but that almost cost him his career. He broke his leg in that Team USA scrimmage. But the three that immediately came to mind for me were Sean Livingston, who, granted, has recovered and had a good career. He won those rings with the Warriors. But, I mean, people were touting him as the next dunker, as the next guy who was going to drive it, like the next Vince Carter type. Not necessarily a great shooter, but had great handles and could get to the basket and elevate. And then had that massive knee injury at just 21 years old. The second one I have is Derrick Rose, a very obvious one. Everybody talks about his knees. He had just won the MVP, youngest player to ever win it, only Bull to ever win it besides Michael Jordan, and then he blows out his knees. He's, again, another guy who has slowly come back right now this year for the Pistons prior to the season getting canceled. He was playing great, best year of his career since. But we definitely missed out on 2, 3, maybe 4 years of prime Derrick Rose. And then the last one is kind of he was never going to be a superstar, I don't think. But Gordon Hayward had just been traded from Utah to Boston and was set to be their number 2 behind Kyrie. It was going to be him and Kyrie Irving. We're going to, bring Boston back. And then in the first game against the Cavs, he broke his ankle, missed the rest of the season. I think he was really about to hit his peak, and now he's just a role player for them. I don't think he'll ever quite be the same athletically because of it. But those were the three that came to mind for me. I'm sure I'm missing some. I tend to not really do research on these and not Google it. I try to think of who comes to mind for me. But
well, yeah, that's all right, and that's kind of that's kind of what we went towards last year was the Spitfire way of just random questions, right? We're actually going to get back to that eventually. Once sports fires back up again. Hopefully we can. I see Tennessee's kind of trying to open back up here in a little bit, so hopefully you can get back down there, G. After all this, sooner than later, get back into the swing of things, right? From the injury standpoint, I had Derrick Rose was the first one that came to mind. He just kind of dropped off the face of the map, right? John Wall was another one, even though he's not. I mean, he's not done yet, but my biggest one was Grant Hill. Grant Hill was the biggest one for me. So growing up with them at the Pistons, kind of when they were mediocre, but he was by far one of the best players in the league at the time, and then just kind of fizzled out. Right, I think he went to the Suns. Kind of fizzled out at the Suns.
Yep.
I had also on there Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway also kind of had that major injury, and then T-Mac as well. T-Mac, I think those guys pretty common. But another guy that really never even got a shot was Greg Oden. You remember Greg Oden? He just kind of went down. What a bust, That's a set because we bring him up on the biggest bust of the first draft pick in the NBA, right? And we got a couple other. Woody says Rose. Yep. JJ says Grant Hill. Zach French says Brandon Roy had to quit due to injuries, so that's even worse. Yeah, that's not even a fizzle out, right? That's a you retire after that. So those are some really good ones, guys. Those are. It's a shame too because I thought I agree with you. I think Derrick Rose was one of the most exciting players to watch in the NBA, and a lot of people don't remember that the Pistons actually had him the last 2 years, right?
Yeah. This last season we had him all year.
You just don't hear about him anymore, which is just a shame. But Grant Hill definitely was number one. The guy was fierce, just a beast at Duke, and he comes in the league with the Pistons and was awesome. The Pistons were actually decent when they had both Grant Hill and Jerry Stackhouse. A little before your time, G, but luckily you didn't have to suffer through that. But those are. Those are the guys that I had on the list, but Grant Hill by far. Let's move into the next one. This should be a fun one. I'm curious to see who you actually have, being that, excuse me, being that you obviously haven't watched a lot of them, but your top 3 Michigan quarterbacks. I was kind of going with, who do you think was the best, but I kind of want to switch it to like your top 3 like favorite. Let's do that, buddy.
Okay.
I'm not sure how you really answered it, but heck, we can go either or.
Yeah. Yeah, favorite is more the direction I leaned. Again, we tend to have these conversations, and you and I, and then my dad commenting all our three different, ages. So we've all watched a different amount of these guys, right? Like I have 2000s to now. I have like this
And
millennium thing,
unfortunately, there
Um,
actually, you know what? There were some decent quarterbacks in that time. So go ahead, buddy.
There were, yeah. So for my favorite, it's easy Denard Robinson, and it's not because he was the best. He wasn't. He could
That's
barely throw
right.
the ball. When he threw the ball, we all covered up. We all watched like this, hoping that he found somebody open. Um, so he was never the best quarterback, but he was just so fun to watch. We talked about him on the last episode because I said he was
Yep.
one of my favorite
Yep.
Michigan athletes of all time. Just a blast to watch. Enjoyed the student atmosphere. Loved being in Ann Arbor. So he was my favorite because of that. My second favorite is Chad Henne, 4-year starter, right at the peak of me becoming like a huge football fan. Led us to the Rose Bowls, never won them, but we were there last time. One of my favorite games was when he threw the touchdown to Manningham to beat Penn State. The triple overtime game where him and Braylon Edwards hooked up against Michigan State for 2 big touchdowns. So he's definitely got to be up there. And my third and final selection, this was a tough call between several guys who started for 1 or 2 years since 2000, like we talked about. But I got to go with your boy John Navarre. Uh,
I
the
figured you
first
were just
Rose
going
Bowl
to
I ever
throw it in
watched,
there.
and I'm not just throwing it in there. I do want to make my case. Statistically, he was almost as good as Chad Henne. Took us to the Rose Bowl. The first Rose Bowl I ever watched, him and Chris Perry were our guys. I got to watch him play in the NFL, and I thought that was cool. This is a really random memory, but he was playing for the Cardinals. He played, I think, 2 games his whole career, but I happened to watch one of them, and it was the first time I remember being like, "Oh, I know that guy from Michigan." Like
And he
I
threw
hadn't
like
had
six
that moment
interceptions
yet in
against the
my life.
Lions.
It might have been, but regardless, he was there, and yeah, John Navarre is my third. They're just like you said, there haven't been a ton of good quarterbacks, and he's the first Michigan quarterback that I remember seeing. So I went with
Yeah,
him.
I love the Denard one. Obviously, for anyone that has ever watched the show, I severely disagree with the John Navarre. We got some. Steve Fox has Rick Leach, who's an older one. Jim Harbaugh, obviously your dad will like that.
Yep.
And then let's see who's
Yeah,
got. Tom Brady. Woody says Denard Robinson. He's not even going three. He's just going Denard Robinson. Straight up, that's
gotta
not
be
bad.
Denard.
You're right, G. Last week we did say he was on both of our lists for our favorite like Michigan athletes, right? Denard
Right.
Robinson, such a Michigan guy, and again, not because he was a great talent at QB. He could not throw the ball that well, really. But what an athlete! Exciting,
Right.
exciting to watch. And you know what? He won us. He won us some key game. Got us to that BCS game. Brady Hoke's first year there. So, and again, just because he was a Michigan guy, he's one of my favorites. So I left him off the list, but I'm glad you mentioned him because I would have felt bad if I didn't mention
Yeah.
Denard. You know, I started I think actually Harbaugh was quarterback when I was born. So starting from Harbaugh all the way up until
Okay.
now with Shea Patterson. I went with Chad Henne. Chad Henne was definitely one of my favorite quarterbacks. I just remember making fun of him because he had that. You know, I always got like Henne tattooed on the back of his arm. Rumor has it he got that in like eighth
Yeah.
grade. So we're always like every time he threw the ball, we could see him being like the bully, you know, and being the guy at Michigan
Yeah.
practice who'd have another guy get behind someone and he'd push him over him or something like that, and he'd be like, eighth grade, baby, eighth grade, eighth grade. But Chad Henne definitely, because he was, I think, you know, he was one of our only 4-year starters. Him and Navarre actually, sadly, were a couple of guys that started as true freshmen. And my second was Jake Rudock. I really thought Jake Rudock.
Really?
At first, I couldn't stand him. Right? I just remember I put Jake Rudock on there simply because one, he's forgotten. Probably a lot of people don't even. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, would you have even thought of him, G, if I hadn't mentioned him or?
No. When that's funny you say. I was just, as we were talking, trying to think of like if there's anyone even close to those top three for me, and my brain immediately goes to like Devin Gardner, Wilton Spate, Shea Patterson, but Rudock. I think part of it is only played for
Yeah.
1 year for
Yep.
Michigan. And it's funny, every time I think of Rudock, I think of that week 1 game against Utah where he missed 2 wide open touchdown passes, and I hated him from there, and I never gave him another chance. And obviously you did, and he did play much better the rest of the year, but I've never forgiven him for throwing
Yeah,
those.
well,
2
that's kind of what I was
ducks that
getting at.
cost
Is
us the
I've
game
never,
against
I don't think I've won a season to where I besides John Navarre, to where I absolutely hated him the first like couple games, and to where he would exponentially improve every week to where, he had one
Right.
of Michigan's best bowl games ever, right, against Florida that year.
Yeah.
And I think he set a couple Michigan records actually for a bowl game. So he was right there the whole time. And obviously he could have went, we should have beat Michigan State that year if it wasn't for the drop home. But other than that Utah game, he was just solid. I thought we were in trouble. I was like, oh, after that Utah, remember he had 4 picks too. 4 INTs, missed those 2 deep balls, and then he just drastically improved on his accuracy. And he was an underrated scrambler as well. He was quicker than a lot of people thought too. So he was on there. My other 2 were kind of a tie between my boy Drew Henson and my boy Tay Forcier, right? Tay Forcier, the little guy who, when obviously Michigan football was at its lowest, gave us a little glimmer of hope after beating Notre Dame. And everyone's screaming for that Heisman, him and Barkley or whatever from USC. After the first 3 games of the season, of course, everyone kind of overreacts.
September Heisman.
But definitely it's a tie between Henson and Forcier. I liked Elvis Gerbach. I like Collins. I wanted Henson over Brady back in the day. Yeah. And let's see who else we got. Jeff Collier says Elvis Gerbach, so your dad was a Gerbach fan. It's tough. Steve and Jeff. It's funny. JC and Steve Fox. They're kind of older than us, so they remember a lot of these quarterbacks. Steve had Harbaugh, and this is kind of before the day where you did air it out, right? It was running. It was true Big Ten football, true Bo football, and so you've got to experience the NCAA where its quarterbacks are airing it out, 40 on average, 30 to 40 times a game. That's the norm, right? That's just how it is. Back in the day, I really would have been curious to see the talent and how you could actually measure the talent, right? Because stat-wise, it was nothing. That's why Navarre had such great stats, because for 3 of those 4 years, look it up. He led in attempts, so obviously you're going to have more yards, you're going to have more touchdown passes, you're going to have more INTs too. But
he's also just a
what's
beast,
that?
So I said he's also just a beast of a quarterback. So
coming in as a defensive end, that was Leadfoot Navarre. We got Steve says Rudock improved greatly as the season progressed. Absolutely, that's kind of what we just. And Spate did well before the injury too. Spate was a solid quarterback. I never liked his throwing motion. It always kind of bugged me. Kind of threw it from his chin a little bit, and he was a big guy. So Spate was a big kind of another Leadfoot type guy too. But had it not been for he could have played in a national championship, or at least the playoff, had it not been for the blown 4th down call against Ohio State and just kind of throwing up a goose egg against Iowa where he did get injured. That was the injury game. So they were undefeated up until that Iowa game, so, and kind of blowing a lot of people out. So not really wasn't really an exciting season until that Iowa game, to where he got injured. Just wasn't the same obviously, clearly wasn't the same ever since that injury.
Right.
So those are my kind of the list. Gee, anyone else that you kind of you thought about and really want to put up there? I couldn't really stand Gardner.
No.
Denard obviously was.
We can talk
was
about Shane
What's
Morris
that?
if you want. So we could always talk about Shane Morris if you want. How good he was.
He was just a head case, but. And then Shea Patterson, I did like Shea Patterson. I'll give. He was just kind of an average guy. wasn't great. I didn't like. He was. I think he was a little more hyped up than as good as he actually was. I was definitely glad though that the NCAA granted him eligibility. 2 years ago. Little did we know we had McCaffrey waiting behind him, but at the same time, I really I don't have any hatred for him. So he just some average years and he did beat Michigan State twice, did he not?
He did, undefeated against Sparty.
That's right. All right, well, let's get to our last what time we got here? We got about 10 minutes left. Let's get to our last kind of topic of the night, and that is with the announcement of what's a couple of high school top-notch 5-star recruits choosing to either go play in Europe or play in the G League for the NBA. And G actually texted me and said, "Did you see?" Was Isaiah Todd, right? announced what he was doing, and then the number one recruit in the country basically said, "Yep, he's foregoing. Obviously, not going right to the NBA. He can't do that yet." But I basically texted Garrett right back and said, "This is gonna be the new norm, right? If you're, I got mixed feelings on it, right? But go ahead, G. Okay. What do you got?"
I mean, to me, my question is why not, right? Like, I understand. I love college sports. As a dude who was never good enough at the sports that I played to have ever even considered going to a school like a Michigan or a Michigan State, or in basketball at Duke or North Carolina, and football in LSU or in Alabama, that's a dream for people like you and I, right? But for these kids, that's such a normal thing. They're not looking at an option of, do I want to go play college sports? Their option is, do I want to go play college sports, or do I want to go become a professional athlete where I'm going to immediately be compensated for my talents, right? I'm not risking injury for nothing. I'm not, because we say nothing because they're not getting an education when they're going to college for 1 year.
I know your dad's probably going to chime in and say, oh, they get that full ride scholarship, but.
And listen, if you're an athlete who is fringe Division I talent, but you get a scholarship and you stay for 4 years and you never play professional sports, then that scholarship absolutely is invaluable. Yep, that's incredible. That's great for that kid. However, these aren't those kids. These are your LeBron James, your Kobe Bryant, your Kevin Garnett's, the guys who used to make the jump straight from high school to the pros, that are capable and worthy of being paid for their talents right now. They are better than a lot of players on G League rosters right now, right? Therefore, they absolutely are entitled to go earn that money, and I think it's great for them. I think it's, like you said, it will become the new normal. It will be becoming, the new normal, just because these kids want to be compensated. They want, we've talked about this before, a math student can go tutor and make money while he's on scholarship for mathematics, but a basketball player couldn't go give a dribbling camp and pay for private lessons to give to kids while they're an athlete. The rules are so stupid. They're so absurd. They make no sense. The NCAA is beyond corrupt. No reason to go mess with it. Go to the G League. Go to Australia. Look what LaMelo Ball just did. He bought the team that he was playing on because he became a businessman at 15 years old. Use your talents to get your worth. It's an open market for a reason, and I think that the NCAA has held a monopoly on that for far too long, and I love to see these kids get what they're worth.
And that's kind of where I'm on the same page as you on that. From that point, I feel the NCAA is just such a corrupt, almost like a corrupt government organization, right? Basically, friggin' communist, right? To say you can't do this, you have to do this, you can't do that, you have to do this, especially from the paid aspect of it. And I again. You bring up your famous a good saying of why not? Why not? Why would you not go? Right. And I'm going to play devil's advocate here, but why would you not go get paid for your talents? Right now, the other side of that, and this is where I'm not trying to strike up an argument here on this side, but I can see, I got a lot of people also saying, go to college because you can market yourself much better than you can in the G League or going over to Europe, right?
Absolutely.
Would we know in hindsight? Probably, but we have no guarantee. Would we know who Zion Williamson is if he would have went and played in the G League or Europe? No. All of his marketability was at Duke. He went to playing for. Here's another. I'll get to the second point too, which is very critical. Would we know who John Morant is if he wouldn't have played in college for a while? We'd like to think so, right? Because we could say, oh, well, they're just extreme talents, so they're obviously going to go to the NBA as soon as they're eligible to get to the NBA. But we don't know that, right? Zion could have got injured in the G League. No one would have ever known about him, right? No one would have ever known about him. You really didn't hear about Zion in high school until he started to play at Duke, right? Until you started watching all the highlight reels. Same with John Morant. A lot of these guys you would never have heard of. So marketability in college is huge because, one, you're going to play on TV all the time, right? You're going to play on TV all the time. If you are that good and you're going to a good university, as most of these five-star recruits are, you're going to be going to a Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, Kentucky's, who will play every game on national TV, even against the scrub teams, right? Even their exhibition games are on TV. But I also think, to point number two, is it's invaluable to play and learn at the age of 17, 18, 19 years old to go play for a good coach and teach you how to become a man, go to college, learn that responsibility. That's why the NFL, a lot of these guys physically could go play at the age of 18, 19. The problem is they go to college to become a man, right? They get mature in college. Go live away from your home. Go learn how to budget your money. Go learn how to do all of that stuff while you're in college. Some of them don't do the best, right? But at the same time, it is invaluable that mentor that you have as a Coach K, a Roy Williams, even a John Beilein, an Izzo, going to play for these guys to really learn from a man that knows the game of basketball, right? And become more marketable and possibly improve your draft status. You could go play in these G Leagues, these coaches. I can't even name a coach in the G League. You know what I mean? So those are what's that, G? Sorry, buddy.
No, I agree with what you're saying as far as the coaching goes. That's the one thing that I do think that college does still have an advantage of versus this minor league option, if you will. But the marketability thing, I get it. I guess if you're trying to be a brand, if you're as good as a Zion and you want your brand to grow marketability wise, the college makes more sense. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter so much if we know who they are, if NBA execs know who they are, right? And you know who all of these G League teams are now owned by and affiliated with is like a big brother NBA team, right? Like there's the Grand Rapids Drive that are owned by the Detroit Pistons. Every team has like a minor league affiliate. It's just like almost like AAA in baseball, right? So at the end of the day, marketability wise, you're absolutely right. Going to college, they're going to get on TV. They're going to have that Duke status, that Michigan State. But at the end of the day, does that matter to them, or is what matters to them that there's NBA scouts at every G League game? There might be 15 people in the stands at a G League game, and 8 of them are NBA scouts. So if you play well in the G League, you're doing it in front of NBA guys. Some of your teammates are going to go get a 10-day contract at the end of the year, and they're going to be like, hey, we got this 18-year-old kid on our G League team. You need to get him up.
Yeah, and like I said, I brought it up for the sake of argument, and
well, there's absolutely points against it. There absolutely is, and I agree with the points that you're making. I think the coaching is the biggest one, right? You can't be. I think football's a little bit different. I think football, the level of play from high school to college is such a big jump.
That's kind of why I brought it up. It kind of matures them, makes them a man, right? Because it is exponentially from every league, right? From high school to college, and then college to the pros is just exponentially that much quicker, stronger, faster. Everything is just you got to become a man quickly.
Agreed.
Right? And I totally agree. And like I said, another issue that I have with it is when they didn't have this rule that you did have to go to college. Remember there was that one year where there was like 20 high schoolers that went out for the draft, and I don't think any of them I'll have to look. Gee, I'm not sure on this stat.
But that's on them.
What's that, buddy?
I just feel like that's on them. If they got bad advice, that's not our problem. We are not a society that's built to protect the weak, is the way I look at it. If you're getting bad advice and you're listening to your uncle who says you're NBA quality and you decide not to go to college and you never have a professional career, like that's your fault, not ours. If you're a LeBron or a Zion or a like we've got this kid in Michigan, right? Imani Bates. If you're that good that you can step foot on a semi-professional court, a minor league court, whatever you want to call it, and earn your money and get in front of NBA scouts, you're risking injury. At least whether you go to college or G League, right? So you might as well get paid while you're risking that injury, while you're trying to take that stepping stone to the next level. I love college sports. I think that this might even be good for college sports. I know that that's probably a strange argument to hear, but I think it's going to cause a lot more four-year guys, a lot less.
Because we had that discussion a couple weeks ago, right? To where we're like, it's hard to see. We'd love to see the Michigan type or the Beilein type of recruits, right? To where they're a 3-star, they're not ready to go pro, and they'll stay for 4 years. The Simpsons, the Derek Walton Juniors, you get to build on these guys, and it's very rare you get a guy like Cassius Winston who has an insane year and then decides to come back to college, right? That you just don't see it. You just don't see it very often. So, that's well, guys. What do we got? It's exactly 8:00. What we'll do maybe next week, G, is let's bring up the topic of, because I think are you on board with paying NCAA athletes? All right, so we're gonna have to lay this out, because we're gonna have I'm sure there'll be some SJWs saying, well, there's gonna be people that deserve the same amount of pay as some of these Zions, and right, that's a whole nother topic. So I know we've gotten, or me and you were actually on the the same side of that actually when earlier this year on Facebook there was some women's soccer things going on, but that's just something that would, I think that'd be a great discussion. We'll have to set it along, or maybe, what we could do is like one topic, like an actual half-hour special of one topic, right?
We could do a midweek thing where we do, our Tuesday episodes or our Spitfire like we've been doing, and then on Fridays or Saturdays we do an hour discussion.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. That'd be kind of fun, and then have what we can do is I've been gathering a lot of Skype callers. So guys, again, if you want to join in on the show at some point, make sure you Skype me aamble12. It's been scrolling at the bottom there. I got the new graphic on the screen there that's been scrolling. So make sure you just search aamble12 and send me a chat, and then we'll get you set up. Like I said, we have this little three cube screen that we can add you, and it would be great to get like some other callers in, right, G, and then we can basically go after them to get what we'll have to go 2 against 1 basically. But another couple, just a quick few last ones. NCAA, Steve Fox says NCAA isn't as powerful as they used to be. Zach French's design was equivalent to what Emily Bates is, the state of Michigan. Kyle Woody says my son Braden says Scotty Barnes. Is that a hockey player? I'm not sure. You have to let us know, Woody. Woody says great point, G. I assume he's talking about the payment or the going pro. And Woody said the hour flies by. Another great show, guys. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Really appreciate it. This is always a good time, G. Thoughts and prayers go out to you guys, Definitely. Man. And thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Again, Adam Amble, Garrett Collier. Please send me your Skype, and we'll try to put something together for a midweek special on just one topic. Definitely. We'll do a little research and like a controversial topic, basically, because I don't like this. I want to keep politics out of all of this, but this is kind of a sports thing. So again, G, thanks for joining tonight, buddy. Thanks for taking some time out of your night. To everyone else, again, thanks. Thanks to G. I noticed you had the hat on too, G. How's the hair looking, buddy?
Oh, it is long and gross.
The girlfriend was able to give me the weave just yesterday, so it's looking all nice and tight. I'm loving it, man. It's definitely important.
I need it.
So thanks to Jess on that one. But thanks to everyone else. G, you have a good night, man. Tell the family hello for me, and we'll talk soon. All right, buddy.
Hello, brother. You too.
All right, later, buddy.
Talk to you. See you later.